Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Supriya from Momly. Today we have Gayatri Vamsi. She's the founder and CEO of Buzzing Bees, which was created with a vision to provide holistic education for kids in a creative and fun environment. She's an MBA graduate and she first discovered her love and flair for teaching as she homeschooled her sons in US. She developed effective methods of teaching and designing a curriculum that uses creative worksheets and fun activities. She's the recipient of the US Presidential Award recognizing her exemplary contribution in the field of education as a volunteer. She's also a parent, coach, emotional intelligence trainer, memory trainer, and teacher trainer. I think words are not enough to describe Gayatri. Thank you so much for joining us today, and over to you, Gayatri. Very interesting topic today.
Thank you so much for having me over, Supriya. It's always fun to meet new parents and talk more about anything related to parenting and schools and stuff like that, right? So welcome to our session, CBSE, ICSE, IB and IGCSE, the right boards and the right school. So having younger parents here, I would focus more on the right schools and then focus more on the right boards, right? So let's get started. And if you have any specific queries that you have, you put it in the chat box. And if you have any questions during the session, you put it in the chat box. We will take up the Q&A at the end. So what is this session all about, right? So we will actually have a small introduction to our Indian educational boards, so which are predominantly CBSE and ICSE. We will also understand the pros and cons of each board. We will touch base upon IB and IGCSE, but we will go a little deeper on CBSE and ICSE. See, these days the problem is the plenty. So when we were children, or even a few decades ago, it was very easy for parents to choose the schools. So they had very simple criteria: nearby, affordable, and some parents were happy. So that made our job much more easier. Now it is too many options, too much of information overload. Because we also hear about CBSE, we hear about IB, we hear about IGCSE, we hear about Atelier, we hear about Waldorf. There are so many names that we hear and we are confused with which one to go, because all parents want the best for their children. So we are so confused because of the options and because of the information that we have, right? So today we read about CBSE, we feel okay, CBSE seems to be the right board for my child. A week later, you meet a parent whose child goes to ICSE or a different pedagogy, and they are gaga over it. We are confused again. Oh, my thought of CBSE seems to be something wrong. Should I think about this way? So another experience, you hear about Atelier, which is a totally different methodology, and you are worried if that would be the right choice for your child, right? So we are very, very confused, and this adds to the complexity of the decision making. So being aware of each board, understanding the pros and cons, and then being able to decide which might work for our children is what we are going to talk or focus on today's session. So we'll go in deep about the pros and cons of each board, and I will not talk a lot about impact on career and college pathways because we don't have that age group of parents here. And we will also dispel some myths and bring in some reality facts when it comes to the international boards. Because if you see, international boards are picking up quite well in India. Like when I moved to India in 2016, there were hardly a few schools in Bangalore which used to follow international boards, the IB and IGCSE. But now even a lot of popular CBSE and ICSE schools have started their IB and IGCSE branches, because the demand is picking up, and the awareness is larger today for parents, and the demand is there, and we have new schools propping in these boards as well. So keeping your children's age in mind, another 5 years, it will be everywhere. Nugan corner of India, we are going to see ICSE and IB boards. So then we will have a interactive Q&A. So pack your questions for then, or you can ask me on the chat box. Put it on the chat box right away. So then we will summarize our session. So who am I and why am I talking about this, right? So more than anything here, the only qualification that I weigh in more than all these is I'm a mother. I have gone through this journey of parenting. I've gone through this journey of education, choosing the schools, etc. myself for my kids. So I have two boys who are 18 and 13-year-olds. So I was a homeschooling mother back in the US. And if you ask me why did I take the decision, I think I was very selfish that I wanted to spend more time with them. But looking back, I feel, oh man, I don't know how I did it. So my elder one went to school for grade 6 and younger one went to school for grade 2 because he went early because he was bored at home because he was all by himself. Like when both of them were there, we used to have a lot of fun. But when he became alone, by then we had actually moved to India. And I was also not very clear how the homeschooling path looks here for their colleges, etc. But whereas in the US, it was a different scenario because it is recognized very well and certifications and those were never an issue. So everything, they went back to school. And after they went back to school is when I started Buzzing Bees, which was started to help the community parents, but it actually, by God's grace and things fell in place, and today Buzzing Bees is a education consulting company where we work with parents, teachers and children across various schools in Bangalore. So what are our boards that we are going to discuss? One is our CBSE, ICSE, IB and Cambridge ICSE, IGCSE. Okay, so what are these boards like? So these two, CBSE and ICSE, we're aware which are our Indian boards and the other two are our international boards. So when it comes to Indian boards, I would also like to point out state boards. So each and every state in India has their own state board as well. So which are the most of these state boards are followed by very few schools but followed across the government schools in that particular state. If you take Karnataka State Board, which is the predominant board across Karnataka, more in the rural areas than the metros, but all the government schools in Karnataka follow state board only. Okay, so the major difference between each state ka board will be the language. The third, for them it is the second language because Hindi is their third language, whereas the local regional state language will be their second language. When it comes to state board, very beautiful content actually. So compared to CBSE and ICSE, state board curriculums are very good, but the challenge is the delivery. Most of the schools that follow state board do not have that kind of well-equipped and trained teachers. That is why it is the least preferred board. It is not because of the content, it is because of the quality of the teachers and the quality of the schools that are affiliated to the state board. But when it comes to 11th and 12th, a lot of children actually prefer state board because it is a bit easier to score in the state boards. So if when it comes to 12th, your boards scores are important, so they pick up state board. But I have a different perspective which we will cover later. Okay, so CBSE is our predominantly used board across India. So and it is mostly widely accepted also because of the same curriculum that is followed across the schools all over India. So even if you're moving from one city to the other city, one state to another state, and if your kids are studying in a CBSE school, the transition is not going to be much when it comes to the content of the education. See, of course, the culture, the environment, and all those things might be a challenge, but at least the content and the methodology, the framework, the mindset that is required is going to be the same. So ICSE is a little different version of CBSE. Okay, so very similar boards, but ICSE is not an international board. Okay, many schools which follow ICSE have name as Gopalan International, some XYZ International. They are not pure international schools. Kindly note that it is only the infrastructure or the other extracurricular activities that they have makes them at international standard, but they are not international schools. So if they claim it, like if you follow your values and ethics, you should not be claiming an ICSE school as an international school. But unfortunately, the marketing or the positioning of these schools, they put it as international, but ICSE is very much our Indian board. Any questions so far? We can move, Supriya. So IB and IGCSE are the pure international boards, whereas most of even the school academic year is different. So if our Indian schools are starting in June, they start fag end of July or in August, and their exams happen during May. And the curriculum that they offer is globally recognized. So if you are a family who feel that okay, after a couple of years or after a few years we might be shifting abroad, then this is a board that you could actually consider, any of these. But we will go deeper into each boards over the coming slides. So this is just an overview of the boards that we are going to talk today, so that you are familiar with the names when we go deeper. Yeah, Supriya. So what are the state board pros and cons, CBSE pros and cons, ICSE pros and cons? So before even you think about the board, we actually have some clarity over these areas. The clarity of the child, we are talking about younger children, so we don't have to consider this, but you have to consider the parenting style that you are following. What are the aspirations you have for your own children? And always remember, no one size fits all. I have two boys, and two boys have never been in the same school. They have always been in two different systems, two different schools, which follow two different pedagogies. Because though my parenting style, the environment, or the way we are raising our children is the same, the nature of both my kids are very different. So you need to, even before the boards, you need to understand these areas. As a parent, what are your priorities for your children? As parents, what are the parenting style that you are following for your child? What is the home environment and culture, and what is the nature of the jobs that you have currently? Does that require movement within the country or outside the country constantly? And when it comes to infrastructure, how important is infrastructure for you as a parent? Because these are the ones that will help you decide the school and the board at this age when you have smaller kids. But I'll touch base a little with older children, because anyway your children are going to grow old, right? So when it comes to children who are in 6th and 7th, right, then the clarity of the child matters. Because when you see CBSE, you have to study all the subjects, whereas ICSE has an option to choose your subjects in 8th itself. So if the child is clear that the child is not going to go for sciences, when he grows up, like when he's in 11th and 12th, then ICSE is a better option, because you can remove or do not choose what your child doesn't want to pick up. But if the clarity of the child is not there, like even in 9th and 10th, the child doesn't know what he wants to do, it's better to go with CBSE, where you will be focusing on all the subjects equally. So you don't have to decide that whether you want to drop off math, you want to drop off science, right? You want to pick up business studies, you want to pick up economics. That depends only if the child and the parents are clear about what they are doing in their higher education. So why am I focusing on the clarity of the child? Because it drives the decision making. But at the same time, it also has its cons, because see, grade 7 and grade 8, not all children may be sticking on to their interest. So because if you ask children, it keeps changing, right? So as and when they come across something fascinating, they say that, okay, I want to become a doctor. Like after a month, if they meet somebody who's doing a different who is very fascinating profession, they want to pick up that. So we don't know, right? So if you want to be on the safer side, but want to expose children to all the subjects, then CBSE is always there. Or if you want, like, okay, I know what my child is going to do, but to be on the safer side, I will still choose all the subjects, but I will pick specialized subject. ICSE has an option. You can pick basic math and advanced math. So when it comes to younger grades, like, below 5th grade, boards doesn't matter. CBSE and ICSE pretty much are the same. Both doesn't matter. But I would actually ask you to focus more on the commute, the infrastructure of the school. How is the teacher iteration rates? How well lit the classrooms are? And those would be my focus areas than the boards. Because I don't want a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old to travel like 1 hour one way just to reach the school. It doesn't make any sense. And I know a lot of parents who chose a particular school because the school had swimming pool. Right? So is that your priority? What infrastructure are you looking from the school? Be very, very clear on that, and then comes the board choices. We can move. So what is actually CBSE, right? So these are suitable for traditional routes. If your child is picking up sciences, like, going into engineering or medical stream, no doubt CBSE is an option for you, because all the Indian university entrance exams are based on NCERT, which is supported by CBSE. So it's very, very easy and widely available schools. Like there are umpteen number of schools in India which follow CBSE, so which makes it easier for those families who relocate from one city to the other city. So standardized textbooks by NCERT, as I mentioned even earlier, if my child is in a CBSE school and they follow one particular textbook for history, the same textbook is followed by many schools across the country. So it is very standardized. You don't have to worry much about the books. But there are some schools I'm not sure about outside of Bangalore, but in Bangalore, where they follow a combination of CBSE and ICSE until particular grade to bring the essence of both the boards. And in 9th and 10th, they follow only CBSE or only follow ICSE. So 6th, 7th and 8th, they have a mix-up of CBSE and ICSE. Then again in 9th and 10th, they follow only either CBSE or ICSE. Very much in line with competitive exams. Larger focus on math and science. That is why I said if your child is clear taking up either engineering route or medical route, you blindly pick up CBSE because it is a very large focus on math and science. They go deeper and their standards are pretty high when it compared to ICSE. And CBSE also allows private candidates. What I mean by private candidates is, if your children are homeschooled, or if they're not going to any school but following a different methodology at home, but at the same time you want them to write the boards and have the traditional route, CBSE has an option through NIOS, which is National Institute of Open Schooling, or you can actually pick up pure CBSE as well. But CBSE has a very set framework, like two one formative, one summative exam. So when you are choosing CBSE schools, the content, the exam format, the paper, the question paper format, everything is pretty much comes from the board. The schools does not have a lot of leeway in changing or modifying the patterns. Okay, so that way it makes it easier for children for the transition as well. But when you're considering two CBSE schools, don't go by, oh, this particular school has too many exams. Most of the CBSE schools will have similar exams. So consider other things, like how far is the school from your house, and how is the infrastructure, how is the teacher quality, do you know any kids who go there and are happy about it? So talk to a lot of parents. Don't go by, when you're talking to parents about the school, don't go by like whatever they say is what is right. See, there are some schools which work very, very well for some children, may not work for other children. It doesn't mean the school is bad. It doesn't work for us, that's all. See, my two kids are two different personalities. So one needs extreme structure. Like if you give him well-made structure, he thrives. So the other one will feel very, very suffocated and overwhelmed if there is too much of structure. They both are in CBSE.
And by what age do you kind of assess this? So for like parents with younger kids, at what
grade
age?
5.
5, okay.
Yeah.
5 years or grade 5?
Grade 5.
Grade 5, okay.
See, until then, it is the class environments, the teachers that make a difference in the child's life than the board as such. Because whether you put them in IB, IGCSE, CBSE, ICSE, they are still going to learn CAT, SAT on MAT. But the way they are going to learn is going to be different. Because the basic math, basic sciences, foundational literacy and numeracy is what we focus till grade 4 or grade 5. Then comes advanced math and deeper physics and chemistry and all that, right? So till that point of time, it is more the school, more the friendliness of the teachers, how open they are to actually build that holistic environment in the child, how they are encouraging children to be interactive in the class. These matter the most than the boards. We can move on. So ICSE, the school has a bit of flexibility, like compared to CBSE, where they can choose their own textbooks. So some ICSE schools actually choose IGCSE textbooks. So equal focuses on arts, language and sciences. There are varied subjects offered in the higher grades. CBSE is very, very limited, but whereas ICSE, you can choose entrepreneurship, you can choose art as one of the subjects, you can choose Western music as one of the subjects in your higher grades. So there is a varied options that you can pick and choose from. And there is and CBSE, it is little bit of rote learning because they focus on keywords, but NEP is coming in place, hopefully, fingers crossed, very soon. And from couple of years, CBSE also has changed their assessment pattern. They are more practical oriented questions. They have research based questions now rather than just directly asking define force. Okay, it is changing. And what I have been observing about CBSE is the changes that they are making is very, very dynamic and rapid. They have assertion-based questions these days. Even for 4th and 5th grade, they have included assertion-based questions. So compared to CBSE, ICSE is a little practical approach, but they don't encourage private candidates. You have to go to a school if you want your child to continue with ICSE boards. We can move. So what is CBSE versus ICSE? Here in CBSE, we focus more on math and sciences, whereas ICSE, literature and other subjects go in deep and equal importance to all the subjects. It is very, very clear. CBSE has that clarity. Okay, this grade we are going to impart only this much of knowledge into our children. But here interest in everything also matters, right? Like, if your child wants to try out everything, then ICSE. Depth of application may CBSE lacks. ICSE is more practical than CBSE. But CBSE has very, very less number of subjects. So it is only 5 exams in the final 10th boards. Your English, your second language, science, social and math. Whereas ICSE, they have 12 subjects. So again, depending on how much your child is able to cope up with that many number of exams and things, you can actually decide based on that as well. Because if you have a child who's like, oh my God, I can't take up 12 exams, 13 exams, manage all individual projects for all 13 subjects, whereas I am okay to give 5 exams and I'm done with my boards. So stream choices in 11th and 12th, if you know, it is ICSE. Does the school define what all options and subjects are there? Yes, it all depends on the school. Not all school will offer all the subjects. Based on the demand that they have, they will offer the subjects. Though ICSE as a board has a lot of subjects, but the school might not offer every subject that the ICSE board has. So in what my choice would be when it comes to ICBSE and ICSE is to begin with ICSE, because it's more practical and equal importance is given for all the subjects, and slowly in 6th and 7th you will understand where your child's inclination is, how your child is able to cope up, and then you can take a shift to CBSE. Because that is when we start aligning with our children's 11th and 12th choices, what are they going to do in college, etc. So ICSE focuses more on hands-on projects. They have a good amount of extracurricular activity kind of things included in the curriculum. So for younger grades, pick up ICSE. By 5th or 6th, you revisit your decision, and if your child is thriving in ICSE and you don't want to disturb it, continue. But you feel it's too much pressure on the child, or the child, I know few kids in 8th or 9th, they're very clear, I want to get into IITs. Then move them to CBSE. So when it comes to IB and IGCSE, the basic difference between IB and IGCSE, IB is a methodology, it is not a curriculum. Whereas IGCSE is a curriculum which is very, very similar to our CBSE and ICSE. If you see, IGCSE comes from Cambridge British, where our own boards have also been derived with the inspiration of British education system. So these three are very, very similar. But CBSE, ICSE and IGCSE, there are exams, we have structured assessments, we have structured textbooks, we have structured format of question papers, etc. But CBSE, it is compared to CBSE, ICSE and IGCSE, IGCSE tops in the practical approach, next is ICSE and next is CBSE. But whereas IB is a methodology, they have guidelines, they don't have very rigid textbook or content that the schools should be teaching children. But IB is a beautiful curriculum for younger grades, because IB lets them actually think. Whereas CBSE and ICSE don't give us that kind of environment to think, mold the child into a leader. So that is one basic difference between these boards. And IB teachers are a little friendlier, but do not forget that just because it is an international school, it is going to be like how it is abroad. Our teachers come from Indian background. They are the ones who have studied in Indian schools. A lot of unlearning needs to happen, but it is happening. We can see the change. But again, IB and IGCSE schools fees is not affordable for many parents, but if that can be worked on, it is a beautiful curriculum as such. But a lot of myths around IB and IGCSE is that international boards are only for expats. No, actually, it is open for all the grades, irrespective of your nationality or anything. There are many for their undergrad, mainly because the way their education system has been, the mindset has been developed, actually helps to crack those entrances like SATs or your TOEFL, GREs, etc., than cracking our Indian university exams. Because the mindset, the content that is required comes from CBSE, ICSE. But again, if you want to give it a try, younger grades, these IB schools work beautifully so that they are prepped. But by 5th, you have to move them out of IB to CBSE if you're very keen that your children are not going to go abroad for education. Because the more they are in the IB, it is very difficult for them to take a transition to CBSE or ICSE. Because here it is more on the researched base, here it is more on how much you're able to study. I will give you one simple example. They can use calculators even in their boards. IB and IGCSE calculators are allowed. Even for many of the entrance exams, calculators are allowed. But whereas for our Indian universities, it is not allowed. So the shift that has to happen will become very challenging for children from moving from here to there. But whereas CBSE to IB is easy. So international boards lack rigor. No. A lot of parents actually choose international schools because they don't want to put stress on their child. The stress is common, but the kind of stress is different. Like in Indian boards, it is the exam stress. In IB and IGCSE, it is the project stress. See, end of the day, children have to learn to work hard. Nothing is going to come easy. We have to instill that grit and resilience. That happens through exams in CBSE and ICSE, and that happens through other ways in these boards. So graduates from limited career options after international board. No, it is open, it is well recognized, and in fact, a couple of private engineering colleges have opened up their seats for IB and IGCSE students from few years. They're saying that your SAT scores will be considered for Indian entrances. So a few private colleges have come up with this, like BITS, the Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences, take children with SAT score. But if you have a foreign passport, if you have an Indian passport, that does not work. You have to write the BITS entrance and get through. So VIT takes SAT score. There is Amrita, which takes SAT score. So because these kids do very well in SATs kind of entrances, whereas CBSE and ICSE kids do well in Indian entrances. So international boards are inaccessible to middle income families, which is actually right. Though there are scholarship options, very few kids get the scholarships. And the part is, see, it's not just about the scholarship when you go inside the school, right? You have to have the balancing the peer pressure as well. So that becomes a challenge. So international boards neglect Indian culture? No. They do have a lot of Indian festivals and all that happening in the schools, but the history and geography that they study is more international rather than Indian history and Indian geography. So when they move in the higher grades, that is why I said around 5th standard, you need to move the kid back to Indian boards if you want to, because that's when the geography and history begins in CBSE and ICSE. So if you see our CBSE books, so grade 5 has grade 5, grade 6 and grade 7 has Mughal Empire. So we introduce Mughal Empire in grade 5, go a little deeper in grade 6, grade 7 you go much more deeper, and grade 9 tak you kind of cover the entire Mughal history. So if you move the child in 8th, they might not have the basic foundation that was taught in the previous years. It becomes very, very challenging for children. It can most. So difficulty in transitioning to Indian higher. Yes, it is students from transition to Indian universities, and many institutes recognize these qualifications, but they have their own challenges because of the approach that they need to take to write the exams, etc. Higher education, it is okay. Like, in colleges, there is not much difference where you come from CBSE or IB or ICSE, but in school higher education, it makes a lot of difference. So lack focus on language proficiency. No, they have very good language. So in fact, if you see CBSE Indian boards, when it comes to English, we focus more on grammar. Here in the international boards, they focus more on literature and creative writing. So limited availability of international schools in India. There are a lot of cities that have many schools and which are actually growing. Earlier, yes, it was very limited, so people were not choosing. And if you see 10 years ago, most of these international schools had expats, like, foreigners who were in India. But now it is not the case anymore. So international school boards cater to high achievers. To some extent, yes, but designed to accommodate a range of student abilities. Even a normal child will be able to thrive, but needs a little bit of support because it is not a very clear curriculum. See, when it comes to our textbooks, our curriculums, right, CBSE and ICSE, we know that there is a textbook. This is the chapter that the child should be studying. So we parents will help the children whenever there is need. But when it comes to IB and IGCSE, it is vast. Like, they will give you an assignment to do a research on pangolin and present it to the class. So there is not much that parents can help, but the teachers too. Of course, now with the help of ChatGPT and Google universities, children are very well versed with Control-C and Control-V. So international boards are detached from local realities. No, they have a global perspective, but also include a lot of local curriculum as well. See, if you see one school to the other school, you liked both the schools, do the math for 12 years. What is the difference? How does it look like for you as a family? Because what is affordable for one family may not be affordable for another family. So it is always relative, right? So, and always add 10% minimum for fee increment every year. And there is also a slab. Grade 1 to grade 5, it is 1% that increases. 5 and above till 8th, there is a steep increase, and 11th and 12th, it is another steep increase. So always consider these fee increments, the fee changes between elementary, middle and high school differences. Put the 12-year financial data, see the number, and then make a decision. Because when we see one school to the other school, it might sound like, oh, it's just hardly 50,000, it's okay. But later, okay, what is the difference between these two schools? 50,000, you're paying for swimming pool or like, a good bus transport or have a large auditorium, etc. Then you weigh in these three things versus the amount, will this matter to me? And also remember, any extracurricular that is happening inside the school is only an exposure to the child. So suppose you want the child to pick up that particular sport or anything and go deeper, you have to shell out money and take them to outside academies or coaching. The school will not be responsible for suppose your child is interested in badminton, the school has a badminton class. They will expose the child to badminton. What is badminton? How is it played? The basics, right? But if the child wants to become a player, you have to go for an academy. So do that math as well and compare. So what I did with my kids is when I moved them, they both went to international school. I realized it was not worth it. I moved them to CBSE, focused completely on academics. They are home by 2:45, 3 maximum. So whatever classes we do it outside. We don't do anything within the school campus. We focus, that is like, of course they are in the higher grades where academic rigor is important. So they focus completely on the studies. All the extracurricular we take care outside of the school. So for me, math was very, very important because I didn't want to shell out like another extra for the school and spend another 1 lakh outside the school.
Her question is basically, does IB board differ between the schools? So between one school to the other? Because she's heard that there are 2 types of IB board. Is that true?
There are no 2 types of IB boards. There is only one type of a board where I mentioned IB is not a curriculum, it is a methodology. So each school picks up different approach to that methodology. So no IB school would be same.
I think the next question is, can you comment on these new schools that have come up? Like,
okay, I have a very, very different opinion about these schools. My son went to Kunskip's College. I prefer to be in one boat rather than sailing in 2 boats. So where the particular school that she's named follows CBSE but a Swedish school, which is too contradictory. CBSE is very, very structured approach. Swedish is open learning. So I didn't know how these 2 will be combined and we will be successful. End of the day, both scores matter. So pick, for me, I felt it was like I moved him in the middle of the year because I felt it's neither here nor there.
Boards define the extracurricular? Because most of the schools have become in a way that, IB has a lot more facilities and extracurricular versus CBSE, in my mind, was just traditional. If I want my kids to go into academia, I know that's where they go. But I would probably choose IB if I want them to have a more holistic approach. Is that true, or is
Definitely, Supriya. IB has more holistic approach because see, when you choose art as an extracurricular activity in your younger grades, in the higher grades in IB, you can actually make art as one of your subjects.
Okay.
Same goes with Western music. Any instrument that you play, you can actually make your sport can be one of your subjects. Whereas in CBSE, that option is not there.
One question on what is your opinion on Montessori? Is it okay to send up to 6th grade and then shift to CBSE?
I'm a huge fan of Montessori system because it actually works the way the body is designed. The body is designed to use all our senses, all our, legs and hands and eyes and coordinating. You become much more aware of your own self when you use multiple organs at the same time. Like Montessori brings that essence to you, right? So whereas if you go to a regular preschool, like any preschool, where you have been given a paper and a pen or a pencil and a workbook or maximum some activity, but Mont actually works with children with their hands. Your hands are your tools to open your key to your brain. So till 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, keep them in Mont where the child gets all the subject, the concept deeper, then they can be moved to any board. But there will be challenge to adjust into the new board and expectation because the child is so used to picking up an activity, sitting and doing the activity. Whereas when you go to a regular school, you might have to do that on paper. So there is a small mindset change that is required, but it is not difficult.
A follow-up on that, Gayatri,
Yes,
right?
yes.
How does one know which is a truly Montessori school, right? Because as you said, a lot of people called ICSE international schools. now Montessori is becoming like a brand where everyone's just using it for promotion. How do you truly, as parents, understand that this is a good Montessori school? What would be some of those to look at?
See, go take a school tour. You'll understand whether the school follows Montessori or do not follow Montessori. Just because they have few activities from Montessori, they go to Montessori online shop and buy some activities doesn't make them a Montessori school, right? So very, very few schools in Bangalore which are pure Montessori till elementary. So at least follow it to grade 2 also gives a good benefit for children when you are following Montessori.
Gayatri, great session. Thank you so much again for
Thank you, Supriya. Thanks much for having me over. Really enjoyed talking to you all. If you have any questions, do drop a message. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.